I had been aggregating all of this information, and I had finally said, you know what? We have to do this. And so I had decided to reach out to my unicorn at that point and say, what are we doing next? If we're going to move from now to the end of the year, I need an expert. I need the Sherpa. I need to get there.
Welcome to the show, homies. Well, here's an interview with someone, and spoiler alert, once they bought the home on Christmas Day, they were standing in the middle of their home and screamed out, "We bought a house!" That's because they worked with one realtor and tried to buy a home, and it didn't work out, and they were frustrated, didn't know what to do. So eventually they ended up finding a unicorn, and that unicorn, when they were looking at other houses, told them, you know what? Maybe this second one isn't for you either. So if you're wondering, if you're skeptical, if you're concerned about, hey, am I going to get screwed over in this process? How do I know I find the right realtor when I'm trying to buy a home? Well, here's a real world example, and you can listen to Ashley with all of her tips, tools, and tricks. Let's hear the interview.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
Okay, homies, time for another homie success story. I'm really excited about this one. Ashley is being very nice and coming on the show and sharing her story. So, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the East Coast, this is Ashley. Ashley, go ahead and give us your biggest tip for the homies about buying a home.
Biggest tip, knowing the process helps you catch mistakes and prevent pitfalls. Honestly, it's just knowing what you need to know. And I guess that's where you come in. That's why we're here.
You are awesome. Boy, that was a wonderful soundbite right there. But it's true. So much of what ends up in the preparation and then connecting with your unicorn, not only does it help you avoid the pitfalls for the worry warts out there, but it also helps you succeed in ways because there are just so many different options. Okay, so tell us about you and your home buying journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll give you a little bit of background. So over here in New Jersey, like the housing market was not what I expected it to be. We're over here, my fiance and I looking for a house, just got married February of 2024, exciting stuff. So we're diving into a whole new world of home ownership and we're like, okay, let's do this. And coming from, living in my fiance's parents' house, rent free, we're like, we can't live here forever, brand new couple, what are we going to do? But every single 5-bedroom house out there looked exactly like a fixer-upper and it looked like you had to rip the thing apart. And so kind of had a journey that needed to look a little bit like, are we going to build a brand new house? Is this going to be a section of Legos for ourselves? And so that was kind of how we stumbled into trying to do the best research that we could. So it was a little bit into the June, July timeframe that we were trying to figure out what things were looking like and how we needed to find what home was right for us. And we were starting to make the must do versus the, we can compromise on this list. And I kept hearing you say these things. What are the very core things that you want to have when you're trying to find a house? We started realizing the right house wasn't really out there for us at the time. And you kept saying, supply is low and it's really hard out there. And I think that was kind of where we started to struggle a little bit. And I won't lie, the thing that surprised me the most was that I had to switch my realtor. And you were the reason why I had to find a unicorn, because I switched my realtor after a really big thing that happened. Since I went on a bunch of conferences, I had to take a break in September through October. We weren't looking for a house. And it was when I contacted my unicorn because of you that I ended up finding the house that I wanted and actually moving through the process way faster, because it was letting go of one house that didn't make sense for us because of my unicorn kind of letting me go through the process, understanding what needed to happen. We had an appraisal in, we had a home inspection. I thought I was going to buy this place. It was in October that we were going through all of this. And then we found out that the roof was not the way that it should be. We found out there was mold. We found out that there was rodents. We found out a whole bunch of problems with this place. And we ended up pulling out of it because my unicorn said, hey, you can take a step back. We need to find the home that fits you. We don't need you to fit the home. And you can take a deep breath on this. And then we ended up pulling out of the house. And I didn't think that was something that I was allowed to do. I didn't think that was possible. And so my journey was weird because in November, right before Thanksgiving, we ended up finding a house that made sense for us. And the Saturday before Thanksgiving, we ended up seeing a house, falling in love with it. By Wednesday, we had the contract in. By that day, we were under contract. So in 3 days, we saw a house, found it, got in a contract. It was accepted by day 3. We were under contract in 3 days. And before Thanksgiving hit on that Thursday, I was like, hey, Dad, I think I'm going to buy a house. And I think this might be the one. And it was a very wild journey because between Thanksgiving all the way to Christmas, we did it. And we closed on our house on December 23rd. And on Christmas Day, we stood in the middle of our house and yelled, we bought a house. And it was the wildest journey from July when we were like, there's nothing in the market. There's no supply. I don't think we can do this. This realtor doesn't work. To finding a unicorn and saying, we bought a house the day on Christmas. And it was strange to do that in less than 6 months. And I don't think that I could have done that otherwise.
Whoa, so many things to unpack there.
So many things.
Ashley, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's like 6 months broken down into like 5 minutes. And I don't know how that 6 months went by so fast.
Well, oh, don't worry. I'm going to get into each of those pieces because I'm so curious about a girl.
Yeah, I'm too.
Just once again goes to show that I think a lot of people are more prepared than they think they are. And that seems to be the biggest fear. Like, I can't do this. And it truly just is, you just need your Sherpa. It feels like Mount Rush. I was going to say Mount Rushmore. Feels like Mount Everest, but you just need a Sherpa. And then you figure out it's really just a little foothill that unicorns have climbed numerous times. Okay, so let's go all the way back. How did you guys plan? Did you say, was it engaged in February or married?
We were married in February of 2024. And we were like, all right, we're married. We can't just live in your parents' house forever now. Like, we're ready to move on to the next step. We have to have a house of our own. We can't just live here. So we were like, we should do this. And we were looking at everything. We were like, what do we do? And that's how we found you.
Okay, so had you guys done any savings or planning before you got married?
Yeah, so we had some savings and we had a little nest egg for ourselves. And so it wasn't the largest nest egg on the face of the planet, but it was something. And we were ready to put that down and do what we could with it. And that was also kind of where we were looking for some guidance of how much should we be putting down on a down payment? And here I was thinking that, an extra $10,000 means that I don't have to worry about crazy interest chasing me. But that was something that, my unicorn lender had to kind of talk me through because I didn't realize that it really didn't matter. Keep that money in your pocket for if you need windows or a new water heater and all of these other things I would need down the line. So that's also where I needed some guidance on later on down in the process.
So the reduction of the down payment, not freaking out about PMI.
Yeah.
Because you ended up having more cash in your pocket.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, it's interesting because a lot of people will come to me and it's really just their own individual personalities. Some people absolutely can't do it. I've had people who were getting married and were pregnant and asked me to help them buy a house. Now, to me, insanity, God bless you. They did it all at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think what's important about what you were talking about was there are a lot of people that like to get married and then in that first year start thinking about buying a home. But it sounds like you guys had done some prep work before you got married.
Yeah, for sure. We were very much so already talking about it for like the 2-3 years prior to getting married. And we were like, all right, we have zero debt walking out of our marriage. We didn't put anything on credit cards. It was already paid off. And we were already saving for the house prior to getting married. So we already had 2 buckets of money that we were saving for. So we didn't have to worry about student loan debt. We didn't have to worry about marriage debt. So we were already making sure we were in a good, strong financial position. And we said, okay, we're doing the house thing now. It's been a couple of months. We haven't had to look at, 200 guests in the face and say, thanks for being here. And now we can actually move on to the next step of just, we don't look at anybody except each other and apparently 110 houses. So what do we do next?
Okay. Talk to me about phase 1, the first realtor that you worked with and the big mess and why it didn't work out for you.
Bless her, she was super nice, but I think that her understanding of what we needed out of a house was very different from what we actually needed. And she kept showing us things and structures that just didn't work for us. And so the layouts of the homes were fundamentally different. And a lot of the homes were things that had one bedroom on the bottom floor, two bedrooms on the top floor, and things like that. And as, a new couple that will eventually say, we want to have a baby. Maybe we want to have one kid. Maybe one day we'll have two kids. I have no idea. My husband comes from a fairly large family. And so because of that, we said, if we ever have two children, I don't want to sleep on a floor different from my kids. So that's important to me. That's the kind of a must-do thing on our list. So we want to have a house that, if we have a 3-bedroom house, we want all 3 bedrooms to be on the second floor. That's a layout that's important to us. And so when we were looking for homes, we just couldn't find a layout that made sense for us. And it felt like she wasn't hearing the things that we needed. Or she actually told me flat out at one point, I can't find what you want and the price that you want. You're going to have to make more concessions. I don't think that it's possible. It's not out there. She was using very fatalistic language for me when I was looking for something more hopeful, or saying, hey, let's try to find something that aligns with you. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to hit the pavement and let's get looking. So it just didn't really align with what I was hoping for. And that attitude just wasn't there for me.
That absolute language is something that can be very disheartening when you are a first-time home buyer. And it's one thing for us to have to, but I mean, I've been talking to you for all of 10 minutes. You're a intelligent, reasonable person. I would assume that if we got in that sort of situation, that the conversation would, in order for you to feel comfortable, would need to be more assumptive of the fact that you might want to, maybe expand your financial concepts. Maybe, because this happens a lot where realtors will show you what is in your price point. And if you didn't say absolutely not no to a split level, but you had expressed an opinion about it, sometimes they just show price and they're not actually listening. Unfortunately, a lot of times they don't have either the chutzpah, like you were talking about, to get out there and hustle, or the intimate knowledge of what actually can be as opposed to just what is. Was there a breaking point for you that you decided to end the relationship? Was it, or was it just kind of a overall thing?
I think it was more of a natural break. I was going on a series of trips for my conference season that normally happens because of my day job. And so from September through October, I was just naturally on the road a lot. We couldn't look at houses. We couldn't really dig into it. And so I said, hey, let's just stop having to tour all of these homes, mentally wash our brains, use some eye bleach, and, take a step back. And then we'll jump back into it. And I feel like by having some fresh eyes, we'll be able to dig into this a little bit more and feel more energized after a 2-month break. And it ended up doing us some real good, because we started really ruminating on what's actually important to us. What is the state of the market and what do we actually need to do? And that's actually when you released podcast episode 269, and I actually wrote it down because I needed to reference it.
Okay.
And that's when you literally said, move from Thanksgiving to the end of the year and make it happen, because this is the time that you should be buying a house because of the state of the market. And I looked at my husband in the face and I said, we're doing it. And he's like, right now? And I'm like, yes, right now. I'm done with conferences and no one's going to bother us from now until the end of the year. David said, we got to do it. He's like, who's David? He was very confused. And so from me listening to your podcast so often when I was on planes, traveling, being in taxis and doing all these different things, I had been aggregating all of this information. And I had finally said, you know what? We have to do this. And so I had decided to reach out to my unicorn at that point and say, what are we doing next? If we're going to move from now to the end of the year, I need an expert. I need the Sherpa. I need to get there.
That's incredible. And by the way, kudos to you for a lot of times when people go on the conferences and they travel, there's a lot of downtime, and way to go to use that productively. I mean, not just because you were listening to me, you could have been listening to anything self-help or, something that you needed to learn. That's awesome. How great. 269, the window of opportunity, and finding that window. And so then, all right. So then you reached out, I believe it was September or so when you first reached out. And then there was I looked back, there were 2 different times that you reached out. And then we actually got a hold of Debbie, the New Jersey unicorn. So then when that process started, how did it go? Did you let her know, hey, Sidoni says we're doing this during Thanksgiving and the holidays? How'd it work out?
So I don't think that there was any particular time zone that I said, we have to do this between now and the holidays, where I said, we got to move. But I did indicate that we had the funds, we had the will, and I had already put Google Calendar holds on my husband's calendar. And I said, we have to at least put, morning holds so we can go see houses. I don't care if you go and play Magic the Gathering with your friends in the evenings. I don't care if we do dog walks and do other things. We have to at least spend some time with Debbie, and she's going to get real sick of our faces real fast. But we got to do this. And he went, all right, I'm with you. And so I had kind of been the person spearheading a lot of this, because I guess one of the major things that I may have left out earlier in the story is that I am our primary owner of the home. Like, I was the one who went out, I'm the one who bought it, and I'm the one who's predominantly paying for it, honestly.
Okay.
And I'm our primary breadwinner of the household. And so he's a chef by trade, but he'll eventually be a stay-at-home dad. And I couldn't 100% bank on a lot of his income. So while he was along for the ride, excited for it, very much so with it for deciding how the house is going to be, a lot of this was me trying to figure out our mortgage situation. So that was why when I had reached out to Debbie, the second call that I was making was the unicorn lender. So I was making sure that the two of them were in lockstep before we had all those conversations and what was going on, because I wanted to make sure that all of my paperwork was together. So that was half the reason why when I talked to Debbie, I was also making sure that all of my paperwork was together. So in the event that she said, yeah, we're doing this, I could go, here's the entire Google folder of all of the documents that you're going to need, because David said so.
Yes, the Google folder. It is, it's such a great thing. That's such a great tip for everybody out there, because regardless of, the genders and whoever's doing what, so many times partners will come in, and there are people that as partners, it's going to be 50-50, but there are many times that it comes in and one of the partners is going to be staying home. So that's where all that preparation and having those docs ready to go. And,
Oh, yeah.
the fact that you looked at, it does two things for you. Number one, you looked at everything as opposed to finding a house and then doing it backwards and scrambling to see if you can afford it. But then the second thing is, by getting all those docs together, while you're out and about and traveling, before you go in and look at homes, nobody's going to push you into buying the first home that you see, but you'd already been through the process with one other realtor. You'd already started to know there's a chance that first weekend you might find something you like. And if so, you don't want to spend the rest of the weekend gathering all that paperwork and making sure that you can afford it. So that Google Doc, and trust me, man, the lender loves people like you. Like when the Google
Doc tried
Doc
to hire me. It was very funny.
They tried to hire you?
And she was like, if I could hire people like you, it would be incredible. She's like, actually, are you in the accounting industry? Is that what you do for a living? Do you deal with numbers? You're very good at this. And she kept saying things like that, because I was just so on top of it that I would be the one turning things over so quickly that I would be waiting on them, because you had taught me the process so well that I would be the one constantly flipping documents back within the hour or the same day. And they'd be like, all right, we're going to get back to you. And it was like that with my lawyer. It was like that with my lender. And so it was very funny to see that they were like, you're very good at this. Who taught you? And I was like, David taught me.
Oh, I love it. Well, it's great. It's interesting because it's one thing for people to get, the details of the data and the numbers and all that. It's another thing for people to get the philosophy and the historical side of things, which is what episode 269 the window of opportunity was. So again, more kudos to you for having both those parts of your personality really be able to help you in the process. Okay, so you got home, you made sure your husband had his time blocks out.
Yeah.
How long did the process go? Do you even remember for when you decided to kick it in the high gear? Must have been a couple weeks before you.
So we saw the first house and we ended up seeing it and we really loved it. So it was a single family home that was 4 bedrooms and it had a detached garage with a really beautiful loft over top of it. And we really loved it. Had a beautiful 3-season porch. We were like, oh, this is it. This has to be it. Look how renovated it is. It's not a fixer-upper. We went for it. We put the offer down. It got accepted. We started going through the process from mid-October and it just started falling apart organically when we started realizing from the appraisal and from the home inspection that this should not be something that we pursue. But I started trying to force it. I started trying to make it happen. And it was when my unicorn started saying, don't force the house to fit you. Don't force yourself to fit the house. This should be a mutually beneficial relationship. Can you see yourself living in this house? You keep talking about how the living room isn't the way that you want it. You keep talking about these mold issues, that you keep saying that you can make it work and figure out a remediation thing. You shouldn't have to figure it out. It should just be something that works. And while there are things that you will need to handle later on, once you become a homeowner, as a first-time homeowner, you shouldn't be this stressed about the process. I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to exhale. And then I want you to consider potentially letting it go. And I let it go. And it was hard for me to conceptualize walking away from a house after spending money on an appraisal and a home inspection, because that was thousands of dollars. And that was
Yes.
real hard for me to do. That was real hard. And if it wasn't for my unicorn, I don't think I would have been able to make that exhale happen. But it was November 8th. I'll never forget it. I was standing in the middle of a conference after presenting on stage, and Debbie called me and she's like, are you exhaling? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to tell them to withdraw. I'm going to let it go. And I was standing after just departing from a stage, and I did it and I let it go. And I got on my plane back from Chicago that day. And I said, all right, this upcoming weekend, we're going to take a break. And then in about a week after that, let's try again. And that was the weekend that we found the house. That was the weekend that we found here where I'm sitting now, my beautiful home that I'm now in. And that was how it happened, because we took another break, we cleared our minds, and then we went back out into the world and we found the one. And it just took another 2 weeks. It literally took 2 weeks from the moment that I said goodbye to one and I stepped foot in the next one. And the moment we stepped foot in the one, it was the third house of the day. We stepped foot in the one. My husband looked at me and went, we're not seeing any more houses for the rest of the day, right? We're just putting the offer on this one because it's it. Like, we both agree, like, this is the one. I'm like, I get it. We at least need to go for the rest of the tour. But what if they don't accept our offer? And he's like, no, but this is the one, right?
Oh my gosh. All right. I have to back up. It's such a wonderful explanation of that process, but let's get deeper into that.
Yeah.
I did a whole episode years ago about a guy who was choosing his realtor because he was getting a $650 gift card from Home Depot. And I never want to say that, $650 or a couple $1,000s isn't a lot of money. But when you're buying a home for almost $600,000, you have paid for the inspection and the appraisal. That's a lot of out-of-pocket money. A couple $1,000 there. The equivalent I always make is, it's like when you're buying a used car. Whatever that mechanic wants to charge you to look at it, you realize that's going to save you thousands down the line. The inspection and the appraisal is there for a reason. So within this process, you were still in your period where your earnest money deposit had not been committed to the seller yet.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie had kept it, your unicorn, so that it was not released. You were still in the buyer beware due diligence period.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened with the inspection? Mold. That was a big one, right?
Structural. It was predominantly structural. We had limited it to structural, environmental, and mechanical. And we found mold. We found that they had used 2x4s to prop up the roof instead of proper structural supports. There was an electrical panel in the bathroom, which I have an electrical background, and you can't have an electrical panel in the bathroom. I would have had to rip out the spaghetti and guts of the entire electrical system in that house and move the main electrical panel in that house. And I work with electric utilities for a living. And I know that if I had wanted to do something of that caliber, that was going to be a lot of money. I know exactly what that kind of job runs. And they were trying to tell
I
me
don't do that. And I know that a panel by water is not good.
Yes, it's not even legal. And they tried to peddle me something and say, oh yeah, the previous code inspector said that it was okay because it was a renovation and it used to be a laundry room, and then they turned it into a bathroom. And they said that because it was a renovation, that something was permitted and allowable. And I said, no, code says that that's not allowable, my friend. I'm sorry. And they tried to peddle me lies. And I'm like, I can't do that. And she's like, I'm going to be on your side here, Ashley. She's like, this is what we're going to do. And let's try to actually see if they'll actually make good on this and cover it. But we'll just give them the offering. We'll give them the olive branch and see if they'll give you some type of credit or concession just to even extend to them the offer. And I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to go down that path. And I just want to let it go. So at least she did try to give me all of the opportunities on the table, present to me all of the different opportunities before we actually made the decision.
Well, and when you're looking at the structural things as well, one of the things that I think is interesting is that when people fall in love with a home, sometimes they'll fall in love with a home because of the upgrades. But there also is that exact same thing with renovations, a cool vintagey style house. It doesn't matter if the home is super modern or super vintage and cool. you still always have to look at the guts because
Yeah.
people might be throwing lipstick on that pig. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And if the 2x4s aren't right and your roof collapses, that's kind of something that's important.
Yeah, it's the
And
biggest caveat emptor, honestly. You can have a really beautiful dog run and a great office, but if the electrical is bad and you have an electrical fire, I don't know what to say.
yeah, exactly. Well, and then you stayed protected throughout the process.
Hmm.
And you made the decision, lots of deep breaths, to
Hmm.
go ahead and understand that your money out was money that you were using to determine if this was going to cost you tons down the way. Um,
Hmm.
and then did the appraisal come in low, or what happened with that?
The appraisal itself was fine. It came in exactly on the nose, which is what I expected. And that wasn't a problem. So it was the home
Just
inspection contingency that allowed us to get our earnest money back and then move on to the next step. And the beautiful part was that because of the legal team that my unicorn was working with, they basically said, don't even worry about all of the time, effort, and labor put into this very first tranche of it. When we work with you for the next home, we're just going to roll all of that into the very next phase. And we're just going to keep it pushing. We're not going to charge you for this very first tranche of working with you for this first home. We're just going to move it right into the next home and just bundle all of it together. So you don't need to stress about the money out and the money lost, because we don't want to sully your opinion of having to buy a house and stress you out about it because you said you're still going to pursue home ownership. You didn't say, nope, I'm going to go live in an apartment. I don't ever want to buy a house again. They're like, we're still going to have to do this process again. So exhale and keep finding the one that's right for you.
And that, my friends, is the unicorn difference. I was actually being interviewed on another podcast this morning, and they were asking me about, what I do. I said, being in real estate for as long as I've been in it, the story that you just told, people willing to understand and forego fees and help you get to the finish line because whether they're legal, whether they're a lending team, or whether they're a realtor team, there are people out there that build their business on the good words of the people that they have helped.
Mhm.
And you're a fun person. You probably know other fun people. They probably want more clients like that. So if they give you what you need, it's like going into your favorite. My son's in New York City and he's a freshman in college. And the other day he called me all excited because the pizza place he always stops at, the guy recognized him and he gave him a free slice. So do you think Daniel's ever going anywhere else for pizza ever again in New York where he has a million options? No way. He's like, Dad, I've got a guy. And it's that kind of relationship where they treat you not like a number.
Mhm.
You fast forward. So you find the new place. You told your husband this was it. And
Mhm.
then you went through the pre-Thanksgiving writing of the offer. How did the
Mhm.
negotiations go? It was a weird time of the year. Did you end up having multiple offers or was it just you?
So it was us and two others who were attempting to bid. And if I'm allowed to talk about the numbers, and that is okay, I'm happy to talk about the numbers because it's legal and it's all out there. So I'm happy to do it.
Go for it.
Um, so the house was priced on the magical land of Zillow, which I know that everybody uses for window shopping, but not for anything else. And we shouldn't use it for anything else. But for the magical land of window shopping, it was priced at 550, which I even recognized was probably going to be a little low. We went in at 575. And we said, we're probably going to need to beat people out because, for context, this was a beautiful 5-bedroom home with a full basement and a brand new, completely renovated attic. A developer had come in and completely redone it. And it was not one of your typical rip and flip developers. It was somebody who did it as a hobby. Um, and as part of our let's make it concession, we were moving to the next county over, which was cheaper than the county that we were living in. And so we had said, let's check it out and let's see if 575 is generally what he's willing to bite on. And between our offer and the offer of somebody else, we were the exact same number as the other guy. The only difference was that we were a conventional loan and somebody else was an FHA loan, I believe.
Okay.
And so I think he was kind of trying to do a toss up between us and the other person. They said, hey, essentially identical loans, identical, opportunities here. What are you folks willing to do? Give us best and final by the next day. And so we said, we'll do 585. And so we went all the way up to 585 and he bid and he said, yes, it's you guys. And within 24 hours, they turned it around because I think we beat out the other gentleman who was also bidding at the same time. And that was kind of where we landed. And so we ended up going through the process very quickly and being under contract in, I think, 24 hours. So from Sunday when we saw the house, Monday when we put in the offer, Tuesday we revised it, Wednesday we were under contract and everything was signed. And we were going through the process. By that following Tuesday after Thanksgiving, my home inspector was out the house inspecting the house. And I had already had him in my house. So we were moving very quickly through the process.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the fast inspection because that's a big tip.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question on the financial side. Listed at 550, you went in at 585. Where'd you guys appraise?
585.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all types, did you hear that? When a home is listed for 550, you need to understand the value of the properties. And you will probably get a better hold of that if you have a fantastic relationship with a wonderful real estate support team.
Oh, yeah, the unicorn told us.
Yeah.
The unicorn told us that is probably where it will appraise for based upon how many times she's walked through homes.
Yep. And so we understand how incredibly, frightening it is for the first-time home buyer. But because we have done it so many times, I mean, you had enough savvy to understand that they were under listing their price and it was probably going to go over. But then the concept of bidding is like, where should I cap? And in the negotiations, if you had extra cash, your unicorn could even say, we're going to bid 600, but we're only going to pay, 5,000 over the appraised price. That's an option in your negotiation as well. But having to understand all that means a whole lot of communication ahead of time. So people will tell me all the time, they want me to bid 15,000 over. Should I do it? I have no idea, because was it listed 10,000 lower or was it listed 20,000 lower? Everyone out there, get that in your mindset that the list prices are out there, but you should really know how much a home should sell for after you've walked through it, regardless of what the list price says, if it's way too high or way too low. Okay, so after the first time with your inspection, you ended up having this inspection quickly, which was a really smart move because that means you have lots of time in that contingency period where your deposit you can still get back for there to be any corrections. What happened with this inspection? Was it, obviously it was better than the last one, yeah?
So I made a really good relationship with my home inspector. This gentleman and his son are their own two-man team who service the tri-state area. I really love the work that he does. He uses a drone to look at your roof. He gives you the equivalent of a 120-page report with color-coded stuff about whether or not it's a safety issue, whether or not it's cosmetic, how it'll improve the value of your home, whether or not it's something that'll improve your living conditions, or whether or not it's actually like a structural issue and you need to get this discussed with the person who's selling. And after he gave me such a really good report for the very first home, and that was how I was able to make a really well-informed decision, I ended up using his services again. And wouldn't you know it, he gave me a discount on the second home inspection that I did because I was a good person and I went back to him because of loyalty. And he gave me a phenomenal home inspection yet again. He told me everything from don't use that flex hose under the sink, it's going to cause a clog and a backup, all the way to, hey, this toilet bowl is loose. But we found some major things like, hey, you've got some termite damage to the floor joists in your basement. There's not active termites, but there's old termite damage that's in the floor joists in the basement. I could stick a screwdriver through it. Hey, there's some issues. We had some leaking pipes in the basement, and there just happened to be some leaking radiators upstairs that were spitting steam. And I ended up going to the seller and going, hey, can you fix some of these things? He went in, immediately fixed every single one of those things on his own dime, didn't ask me for anything, went through and actually remediated every single issue without a problem. And then we ended up negotiating some other things and saying, hey, I found some other stuff. Can you handle this for me? And we negotiated a $3,500 credit for the rest of the stuff that ended up needing to be cleared, since he was like, this is kind of small potatoes for me, ma'am. I'm going to have you handle this later. So it was a very good mix of things, being able to understand what was needed from that home inspection, of what the seller could do and then what I could do later.
Incredible. Such a great learning tool for everybody. Well, this whole episode has been. But that's a wonderful breakdown of the inspection process coming from somebody else, not from the old cringy dude on the mic. You can get either have the seller repair things before the close of the contract, or you can get a credit. And sometimes it is a mix of both. And I love the fact that your inspector helped educate you on cosmetic versus safety. and had a real focus on structural and integrity issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the home inspection, there's still going to be a whole lot of items on there that are what, not deal breakers. And that can become a punch list for you, some things that you and your husband can keep an eye on and eventually fix as you go along, just because you've already had somebody look to realize, ooh, this could be a problem in the future. Now, in Jersey, does the termite, is that typically handled by the seller? Do you know that? Or was that just something that you asked, that Debbie asked for and you guys got fixed?
We noticed that there was termite damage in the floor joists, and so we had asked him to fix it. It was just something that we noticed because it was just a couple, and the house was built in 1940. And so because of the age of the house and the fact that it was very old home with wood in only a couple of places, we had asked for that outright. He could have denied us, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know about anything else. He had really good certificates of making sure that there was no asbestos, and he actually showed us asbestos certifications of all of the tiles he had removed in the entire home that were asbestos ridden, and he got asbestos testing from 2 different laboratories and then showed us those certificates. So the seller was really on it with all the things that he was doing, and my home inspector also made sure that he was walking around testing everything and making sure that there was no radon and everything else. So he was very on top of it.
That's incredible. And then, so Tuesday after Thanksgiving, you're there with your inspector,
Mhm.
and then you went through the process. Was there a lot of other things that you had to do during that holiday season, or was it the typical home purchase where kind of everything's in the first 10 or 15 days, and then you're just waiting for the loan?
It was the interminable waiting all the time of just, I've given you everything. I've given you my soul and my heart. Now, please give me the house. That's really where it was. I had to fill out some paperwork because I was doing the first time home buyer loan from the state of New Jersey. So I did get the $15,000 as a first time home buyer. And that's also the main reason why I pursued the home by myself. If I had done it with my husband, they would not have given it to us, due to the sheer fact that our incomes together would have gone past the cap. But because I pursued the home entirely on my own, I ended up qualifying for the first time home buyer incentive from the state of New Jersey. So I got $15,000 from the state, off of that amount. So it was that on top of the amount that I had to, get from anything else that I was putting in. So that helped. And so it was a lot of paperwork for the state that they kept asking. And so I had to go back and say, here is the next round of statements, or here is the next round of paperwork that you're needing. So they're a little bit more stringent than what your typical lender is going to ask for.
Now, was that something you had found on your own before you started even shopping for realtors, or was that something that you discovered in the process?
That I already knew about since I used to work for the state, not in that
Nice.
particular branch and division,
Yep.
but I just used to work for the state. And so I'm very aware of different incentives, credits, grants, and other things that the state typically offers. And I yell it and scream it to the eons every single time somebody's saying, how can the state help me? And I'm like, oh, let me count the ways.
There was a guy when I was growing up, that he's still around, which is crazy, but he was this dude that used to go on TV and he wore question marks all over his
The Riddler?
blazer. Yeah. Huh?
The Riddler?
See, he looks like the Riddler, but he would tell you about government funds and
Mm,
government and money that's sitting there that you can go grab. And
amazing.
it's true, and it's out there. And what you said, I understood completely. But to everyone else out there, the maximums on as far as how much income you can make can affect if you can
Yeah.
qualify for a grant or not. But the fact that you had already been researching this early and had this be part of your entire discussion with your lender meant that, by the way to bury the lead. You got 15 grand. Exciting. But the one thing that I think when we talk about like the second half, the first half of the contract period, the escrow
Mhm.
period here on the West Coast, it's all the inspections and the appraisals and all that. And then it's a lot of sitting and waiting. And all you're doing is resubmitting all your financials. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's because it goes to what we call the underwriter.
Yeah.
And that person will ask you for the exact same thing that you've had in that Google document for 4 months. And it's because somebody else is reviewing, we're going to give somebody $500,000. So let's double check this one more time. But all these grant programs, it is important to realize if someone's giving you something for free, there's going to be twice the paperwork.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the biggest things that I had to educate myself about on the second half of all of this, even though I knew about things, was the area that we're buying in the county in New Jersey. drastically impacted the cap of the amount that I would be granted or how expensive the house could be. Now, I'm not bougie like that where I'm going out and buying $1 million home. But if I was, that is something that impacts my purchasing decisions and my purchasing power. It also impacted the income caps. So if I was buying in one county or the county next door where I came from, that was something that would impact our purchasing decision. And so I'm really proud of my husband for getting all of these wonderful promotions and raises the last couple of years, but that's also what nailed us in the coffin and we weren't able to buy jointly. And
He
why I
makes
had
too
to
much money.
buy solo. So as a result, it's really interesting when we do all this research as home buyers and saying, well, what are we eligible for? And we kind of have to do a little bit of gymnastics here and mental calculus to figure out what grants and incentives can we get. Since I know that there's also the first generation homeowner discount that New Jersey gives, where if you are the very first person in your entire family and your parents never bought a home, congratulations, you also get funds for that. And I was like, dang it, Dad, you and your awesome ability to buy a house, you got me here. So there's all these different incentives and credits that the states give you. And I always encourage people to check it out.
One of the things that I think that can be really helpful for the first-time homebuyer is understanding that the team that you have supporting you, they're going to be able to do more than your basic Google search. And they're going to, because maybe they did it with somebody else last year or last month, and they're going to be able to show you all the options because this is what they do every single day. So having that team to be able to bounce these ideas off of. Now, I say that as the preempt to the fact that, but did you hear how much work Ashley did? So buying a home is something that it's a team effort, but it doesn't mean that you just stand there and let the coach drag you all over the field. If you put the work in, you're going to be able to find things. And, okay, so I guess we have to finish with, tell me about did you say Christmas Day you went to the house? Was there anything in it? Was it vacant?
So admittedly, closing was where things got hairy because I was late to my own closing. And I guess that was the only horrific part of the process that was hairy about anything. I was 3 hours late to my own closing since nobody tells you truly what your closing costs are until closing day, even though the day never changed. And your podcast episodes prepared me emotionally for this as best they could. But the emotional whiplash really did put me in a neck brace that day because I don't think my bank account or my screaming wallet will ever be truly prepared for the amount of capital I truly needed to have on hand, since I was actually quoted about $15,000 less for what I needed in closing costs than what they actually rounded out to, even though the day of my closing never changed. And I had been actively trying to figure out what I needed for closing, and it didn't actually round out to what I needed. And I had to send those documents back 3 separate times to have them redone because I kept saying, this isn't in, this needs to be amended, that's incorrect. Because actually all the way back when we were negotiating and we had signed those papers right before Thanksgiving, one really critical thing was in those documents, and that was a seller concession for them to cover my buyer agent fees. And so I had told them that I wanted them to give me $15,000 to cover my buyer agent fees, since some really important legislation had been passed in New Jersey. And so that $15,000 wasn't in the right spot. Bunch of other stuff was moved. So if I'm looking at, $15K from New Jersey first-time home buyer, my $3,500 credit, all these other things, the numbers weren't lining up. My costs went up and then down and then in the middle, and they kept bouncing. So it was really difficult for me to get all of this correct. And I didn't think we were going to close. And they said, well, if it doesn't happen on the 23rd, you'll just have to come back on the 26th. And I said, by God, we're going to close today if it kills me, because I want to stand in my house on Christmas Day. And so we finally made it there, David. And we did, in fact, close. And so on the 23rd, we closed. We brought a whole entire carload of things over to the house on the 23rd to drop things off. And so that is correct. We went over there on Christmas Day and stood in the middle of our house and we screamed the words, "We bought a house." And then we announced it on social media to tell our family that we did it, since we kind of hid it from most of our family, that we were even trying to buy a house. We hid it from pretty much everybody. It was like the best kept secret that we were doing this. We told nobody, since we were almost traumatized from pulling out of the last house and what had happened. And so we didn't tell anybody until Christmas Day. We took a picture with a Christmas ornament on the steps of our brand new home, and then we told everybody. But it was a very interesting experience to have a single tub of kitchen goods in the middle of our dining room and nothing else on Christmas Day.
Oh my goodness. That is incredible.
Only whiplash part. It was just that one day. Everything
Well,
else was fine.
it's, you know, people ask me all the time, can you break it down in a spreadsheet? And I say, nope,
Never.
have a cushion, because
Hmm.
whether it's impounded taxes or whether it's credits that are in the wrong spot, whether it's prepaying for mortgage or
It
prepaying
was
for
municipal taxes. It was
it's
the
the taxes.
municipality that did it to them. It was the municipality that was the problem. It wasn't even my lender. It was the municipality that was like, "Whoopsie, sorry, we gave you the wrong number. Be back in a
Oh,
minute."
yeah. I did. The hardest part to explain to people about closing costs is how much is prepayment for
Hmm.
states and counties to allow you, because the whole taxation system in our country, people don't realize, is this gigantic system that the government takes the money early and collects interest on it and then gives it to you later.
The
Um,
power of escrow.
I know. I always try to explain to people, like, if you're getting a $5,000 tax refund for 3 years in a row, at some point, you're not saving money by not talking to a CPA. You should have talked to a CPA and gotten less of those acronyms taking money out of your paycheck. But people get used to it and they think that's what I got to do. Well, they do the same thing with transfer of deeds and transfer of property rights, where they end up taking those property taxes and transferring them from one person to another, but then they pre-collect all of this as
Mhm.
if you weren't going to pay your taxes out of your PITI every single month. But the Christmas Day story, my favorite part of the podcast is talking to people about, like, the people who take an air mattress over and spend the first night there, the people that sit in there on the floor and eat pizza just, by candlelight because they haven't turned on the utilities yet.
I
Um,
made the joke with my husband though, because I was the official owner of the home. And even though we're married in the state of New Jersey, he didn't have rights to the home until the first night he slept in it. And because we didn't actually move into the house until January 9th, when the movers came and we had a bed, every time we would come to the home, I would open the door and say, "Welcome to my house." And I would welcome him in. And then I think on January 10th was the morning that we woke up and we had breakfast together. And I had said, "How was the first night in our house?" Because he officially finally had ownership rights. And now it's officially his house too. And he's able to be here and claim it. Because in New Jersey, it wasn't just automatically his, even though we're married.
yep. Oh, that's incredible. What an amazing story. So many tips. I started taking notes and then I just stopped. I'm just going to rewind and go back and listen to this over and over again, because the homies out there have learned so much from what you brought to the table today. So thank you very much. Do you have any final words for anyone out there who is thinking about buying a home?
The power was within you all along, Sailor Moon. No matter what, you really do have the ability to do this. Don't think that you can't. Absolutes aren't in there. It's really just a matter of finding the way forward. I'm gonna leave people with that.
Says the girl sitting in a 5-bedroom house doing a podcast interview.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Boy, there's just so much great stuff in there. I love talking to homeowners. I love hearing these success stories. If you're new, there's a whole bunch more interviews like that. Just scroll through the titles, look for the ones that say interview on them. You can also start at episode 301. That's the 10 basic steps on how to buy a home. If you're looking for vocabulary, we've got that starting at episode 94. Real estate terms from A to Z. There's a whole bunch of episodes on that. And of course, if you've got your own question, go to Ask David. Where do you find Ask David? At howtobuyahome.com. Since about the end of 2023, it's been the hardest time ever for first-time home buyers. I can tell you that as a guy who's been in the business for 20 years. Yet, here I am, interview after interview after interview about people who maybe thought they couldn't do it, or maybe thought they could do it and needed guidance, and other people who never even contemplated the fact that they could pull it off. But when they found the guidance, when they found the actual first-time home buyer specific information tailored just for them, boom, they're homeowners. So gang, I'll say it one more time. You can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyahome.com to get started.